Depending on how this goes, the American consumer may actually end up paying more for Vladimir Putin's war with Ukraine than Vladimir Putin does. As oil prices go up, so does the price of gas and everything else that you buy, from televisions to cheeseburgers for takeout. Republicans have applauded the move to sanction President Putin's gas and not allow it into the United States. Senator Marco Rubio says the administration still needs to do more.
Part one of the plan is in place. We're not buying oil from Russia. Now we have to do part two, which is we should replace it with American oil, not Saudi oil, not Iranian oil, not Venezuelan oil.
All right, Richard Goldberg, White House National Security Council member under former President Trump, with us now. You're part of the Iran sanctions campaign. At this point, just purely taking what happened today, banning the import of Russian oil over the next 45 days, does that actually have an effect on Putin's bottom line?
Not really. It will be sort of a rounding error that you may force some discount in the market in the short term for those who are buying oil. But again, other people are buying oil. One of the major mistakes that the Biden administration has made in all of their sanctions policy was from the start making this sort of a go-as-you-will campaign. The United States will make its decisions. The EU will make its decisions. Japan will get into the game at some point. But we're not forcing other countries to go along with this. We have no secondary sanctions.
But at the same point, if you force Germany to sanction Vladimir Putin's energy industry, people in Germany start freezing to death. They can't survive without Russian natural gas.
The key is to take a page out of the playbook that was successful in the Iran sanctions campaign. So 10 years ago, Congress said, how do we start attacking Iranian sales of oil? How do we start driving their exports towards zero? And rather than taking all of their oil off the market in one foul swoop, remember back then, 10 years ago, we were still over $100 a barrel on crude. We decided to lock up their money in escrow accounts. So the oil could still flow, but money paid for that oil couldn't go back to Tehran. We can do that through our sanctions today, where wherever you are in the world buying Russian oil, Putin just can't access the revenue. It can't leave Berlin. It can't leave Beijing. It has to stay there. And it's up to Putin if he wants to shut down his production.
And then he would have that decision to make. We saw $128 a barrel for Brent right now. Roughly speaking, for every $100 crude oil goes up, it costs the American consumer an extra $1,100 a year in gas, very roughly. $200 a barrel seems reasonable at this point, or possible. Vladimir Putin tossed out $300 a barrel as a possibility. Who's in the driver's seat, him or the free world?
Well, it seems like we're always playing catch-up right now. Every single day, it's a populist thing that's coming out of Congress that we're embracing, or it's simply just something from some idea that Europe came up with that the Biden administration is catching up with. We should have, from day one, gone all in on our sanctions campaign, put it all on the table, impose secondary sanctions on the Central Bank of Russia, which today is not subject to full sanctions of the United States. It is still on the SWIFT system.
Right, no, they've written out Putin's energy sector, but I still come back to this. If you all of a sudden start punishing the Germans and the French and the Brits and the rest of Europe and the Japanese and saying you can't import Russian oil, or making it so that Vladimir Putin says, fine, I'll turn off my production and I won't take the escrow accounts that you talked about. With friends like that, Japan may not need enemies, right?
I would do three things right now if I was the president. Number one, I would impose secondary sanctions on the Central Bank of Russia, Gazprom Bank, and Sberbank.
Why do you think they're doing that already?
Unfortunately, they have an aversion to secondary sanctions. This goes back to their opposition to America First policies. They think that secondary sanctions is America imposing its will on the world, which economically it is because we're the largest economy. But if you actually were to say, listen, you can continue your imports, but you cannot allow money to leave your banks to go back to Russia, otherwise we will sanction your banks, you will have a tremendous negative consequence for Putin, not harming ourselves. Number two, reverse your policy of distancing yourself from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The administration's about to lift sanctions on Iran, the mortal enemy of Saudi Arabia. Why do you think they're not taking their call from the White House? Go ahead.
That was fascinating that the Saudis and the Emiratis and others are not taking the call. We'll see if President Biden ends up over in Saudi Arabia in the spring, hat in hand, because he'd been very tough on the Saudis asking for more gas. Richard, it was good to see you, as always. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.